We are nice. In the first part of this session, we're going to be talking about moving into management. So some tips and suggestions, some observations, some anecdotes from our experiences of moving into management, both for people who have just moved into management, but also a few suggestions for people who are already managing. So in this talk, we're going to be looking at four main areas. We're going to be addressing feeling comfortable within your new role as a manager, something that is often an issue or something to tackle for new managers, how to manage teachers after being one yourself. We're going to have a think about how to deal with the pressures of being a focal point and a source of information for the people that you work with. And then we're going to think about how to continue to develop as a manager and how we can help others develop also. So first of all, regarding feeling comfortable in our new role, like obviously moving into management is or can be a very exciting, but also a daunting experience. For me, moving into management at a previous company, there wasn't really any proper induction. I received very little guidance on what the role actually entailed. I had a vague understanding of how systems like line management work through having been managed for a few years. But apart from that, I was pretty much just left to figure things out as I went along. And to be fair, even with my experience of being managed, it had been quite a hands-off process. So important aspects of it, such as setting yearly goals, were unfortunately generally seen by teachers a bit of a waste of time that nobody really took particularly seriously, and generally just went through the process in an attempt to get management off their back rather than a genuine desire to achieve the goals. So once I was in a managerial position, I really felt unsure about what exactly I was supposed to be doing. I was constantly left with the worry that I was just possibly approaching my role in completely the wrong way, or just waiting for work to come my way, because I didn't want to give the impression that I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. And so I kind of just fell into a culture of trying to keep my head down and just addressing things reactively rather than proactively. Now, in hindsight, I should have really tried to speak more with my line manager at the time to just better understand the scope of my role, to try and gain a better understanding of overall goals that the teaching centre and the company in general was trying to achieve. I feel like having done so would have really helped to bring about a greater sense of cohesion in terms of pulling in the same direction, which was something that the company seemed to be lacking essentially from the top down. In contrast to this, another company I worked for, I felt like they did a really good job of this by providing a lot of opportunities for shadowing existing managers. So when I got that previous role, before I actually took it on, I spent like 2 weeks working with the person whose job I was going to be taking over from. So it just gave me a much clearer understanding of how things were done, how I should be doing it when the time came to do it on my own. And it just made me feel so much more confident when I was stepping into that role. So for existing managers, dealing with this can be in the form of ensuring that you have a clearly mapped out induction procedure that supports and helps to mentor new managers over a prolonged period of time, rather than just an induction that is done over one day and then they're just left to their own devices, but continually trying to check up, follow, support, and make sure the team as a whole is moving in the same direction. Good.
And to add on to what Johnny has mentioned, I would personally break projects into achievable milestones. Another thing that I've realized as a manager is that when we're presented with larger projects or multiple tasks, and if we're trying to keep track of individuals and the tasks that we have currently assigned them on, it's important to break them into time-bound manageable chunks. And my method is that I keep a diary, write everything down, events, tasks, issues, just to stay on top of things and to have an exact clarity on expectations and deadlines. When in positions of management, I would say that larger projects can seem quite daunting. If we were to break it down to achievable and manageable milestones, it will help by making them less daunting and easier to manage. It can also keep a record of progress, and this will help increase productivity and also our motivation levels up. And another thing that I think as a manager, what we want to try and do is that we want to create collaborations between senior management and junior management to help set clear expectations of projects or works. I'm really big on trying to get different people from different teams to work together, not just the usual top-down or even the same tier level people working on a project. But what I'm proposing is that I think senior management and junior management should work together on a task together. And it also provides new managers and people who might be managers a chance to see projects from different angles, different perspectives that they don't normally think about. And it would help us get everyone on the same page for future projects too.
And just to kind of echo what Ku was saying there a little, I think it also highlights the importance, and this is especially for existing managers, of having a clear company culture, something that you really believe in and something that you're able to generate buy-in for amongst your staff, so that you can drive in the same direction and really support each other towards common goals. All right, moving on to our next point, managing teachers. So one of the main things that I learned in the process of getting more familiar with managing teachers was that just because specific approaches that worked for me seemed good in my case does not mean that they will be universally successful. My first managerial position was around 2 years after I had started teaching. And I was obviously extremely inexperienced, pretty unqualified for the role, but fortunate enough through whatever circumstances to end up getting the job. Now, one of the main duties was going around the country, Taiwan, and observing different teachers in franchise schools of the LTO that I work for. Now, this company, it tried to follow quite a strict PPP approach. This was just done for the sake of simplicity because they were employing large numbers of like completely new teachers. So having spent 2 years doing that, it was essentially the only approach to teaching that I actually felt comfortable with. So as a result, initially when I went to observe teachers, I would just solely be observing them through a lens of what I would do and what I felt was the correct way to approach the materials that the LTO used. And so anything that strayed from that pretty rigid framework, I would consider as something negative. Now, unfortunately, it took me a while to realize that I was really failing to take into account just who they were, like the teacher's own personalities, characteristics, just treating them like individuals. And I realized that I was just trying to push them towards being a resemblance of me rather than letting them become the best version of themselves. So subsequently, when observing, I tried to work more with what the teacher had. So trying to shift the focus to developing the skills and the ideas that they were showing, rather than just trying to push my own approaches. Taking this shift in approach, I felt, would often result in changes just being a lot more manageable for the teachers, because then it became much more like minor adjustments and little tweaks that they were making rather than just wholesale alterations that could potentially clash with their entire personality and just seem a lot less achievable. So I feel like this is also applicable to existing managers when trying to support new managers, or when guiding employees along the path to becoming a manager. As managers, it's incumbent upon us to identify what specific strengths are and then try and help the teachers exploit those as best as they can. As with teaching, there's no singular correct approach to management, and embracing the diversity of styles that are born out of our different characteristics also provides us with opportunities to learn, develop, and refine areas of our own approaches in management.
And to add on to Johnny's point of helping line managers develop, I think for me, quite an aspect which is quite important is as managers, we have to be a good listener and be willing to experiment and explore new ideas that's been presented to us. Even though if in the beginning we have doubts ourselves, I think it's still important to trial with the teacher that's presented the idea. And throughout time, you would start to notice as managers patterns of common challenges that teachers would face, both in pedagogy or in management. And I learned to approach professional development differently. Instead of presenting, like what Johnny was mentioning, which is a impression of ourselves, which is a ready-made solution, I'd actively listen to their concerns, encourage them to share their own ideas, and even try some of these ideas out in my own teaching. And when we discussed potential changes, it was a collaborative exploration of what was working and what wasn't. And I think this approach would not only make teachers more receptive to feedback, but it also allows me to learn and grow alongside them. And I think to summarize key important takeaways for this section is that support them in developing and maximizing those skills. Foster a collaborative environment where feedback is actually a two-way street. And you want to make changes manageable by making minor adjustment rather than, like what Johnny said, wholesale changes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, the point about taking what they've got and investigating it further yourself, just because it doesn't sound right to you initially doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad idea. Letting people try things out, then making sure that you're taking the time to speak with them afterwards and generating reflection on it, is really helpful. We'll touch on it later, but when people are able to arrive at their own conclusions, it's much more impactful than just being told something. Which brings us on to dealing with the pressures of being a focal point and source of information. I feel like I've been generally quite fortunate in my time to have some really great managers. A trait that often amazed me was when I would come to them with a problem or a suggestion of how I wanted to approach an issue, and they were just able to see it from an angle that I had completely failed to consider. And often their ideas instantly sounded way better than what I was planning in the first place. However, on other occasions, these same managers wouldn't always have solutions to offer immediately. So they wouldn't blag it. They'd instead tell me to wait, they'd reflect on it, and they'd get back to me once they'd really thought things through more thoroughly. Now, the fact that they took the time to really think things through just made me respect them even more. Conversely, I've also had managers and encountered people in management positions that kind of feel like they always have to have an answer, as if once you reach a position of management, you have to assume the role of infallible authority on everything. And the reality is we're all human and we all have a huge amount to learn and a huge amount to improve on. So I feel like as a new manager, it's really important to be humble and to be honest. Trying to blag and bluff your way through things that you don't really know about is just an excellent way to completely lose the trust and respect of the people around you. And as we say here, trust and respect are so much easier to lose than they are to earn. Now, to be fair, when I was first making the step into management, I also very much felt the pressure of feeling like I had to hide gaps within my knowledge, like I couldn't display any signs of weaknesses. Yet, at the same time, internally, I had a massive amount of imposter syndrome bubbling away. Thankfully, I've had managers that I really trusted, and so I was able to talk about how I felt, and they were able to reassure me regarding what I had to offer, but also guide me towards areas that I could focus on developing in, so that I'm better able to handle these things when they come up. So I feel like as a manager, a huge part of our role is supporting and working for the people that we manage. There'll be times when you know your expertise in a particular area, somebody needs support and is lacking. And in that situation, I feel like the most important thing is seeing that as an opportunity for you to develop so that you can be a better servant to their needs.
And to add on to what Johnny has mentioned, I think, yeah, it is quite impossible with the diverse policies and ever-changing situations. We can't always have an answer immediately, and we frequently rely on our own experiences to guide others. But I've always questioned whether those solutions truly best fit the situation. So for me, what I've categorized it is into two aspects. The first one would be when presented with a methodology, activity, or pedagogical question, I would personally like to empower through guidance. So I aim to direct individuals to the resources that they need or the connections that would assist them throughout the process, so that they're able to find their own solutions. This fosters a sense of ownership and develops leadership potential and also enhances their knowledge. However, when time is critical and stressful, and offering a direct answer can alleviate stress or anxiety, which is why when it's time critical or stressful, I would always offer a direct solution to this. For example, when I was asked on what type of activity can be suggested during a Parents' Day event, on Parent Day, at that time, I would provide a direct answer to the teacher or two different activities that the teachers can implement immediately. And however, I would urge managers to thrive and follow up with a discussion to reflect on how successful it was or adaptation. So again, it empowers ownership and it also builds knowledge. So I think for us, a key takeaway is that these situations can also create opportunities to make the most of the expertise of others you work with. As we spoke about in the previous points regarding exploiting skills of people and the people that you manage. Handing things over to the people that you manage can be a great way to show ownership. And it's a great way of empowering them, fostering an environment of collaboration and peer support. As an authority on a particular topic, they know more about, or at least have a solid understanding of, without letting ego get in the way. It's a really great way to build a stronger team.
Another little point to add on, being solution oriented, sorry. I had an experience with a manager previously where, like 15 minutes before class, I asked for a piece of information. Can't remember exactly what it was. And he was helpful enough to direct me to some books that I could read on the topic. Now, this was 15 minutes before class when I needed an answer. So I quickly learned that if I needed help, I just shouldn't ask him and I should just ask colleagues. So I think being discerning with what sort of advice you're giving and when you're giving it is important. Think about the sort of pressures that they're under, and whether you need a quick solution to fix things in that moment. But then, as we spoke about earlier, making sure that you follow it up. If you can dig deeper, if you can provide something that will support them more in the long run rather than a quick fix, making sure that you're getting back to them about that as well. So, following on from being aware and accepting of areas we need to work on, we have professional development. And yeah, once we're in a position of management, the areas that we need to work on just keep expanding even further.
And so stepping into my role as an academic manager in the beginning, I thought with my master's degree and teaching experience, I would have all the tools to be able to guide my team. I was wrong. My first attempt at suggesting L1 usage in the classroom went really south. The teacher labeled me as authoritative, and I was left, wondering how I could have approached that situation differently. And I realized that managing teacher development wasn't about imposing my ideas, but about understanding theirs. And I think being in this position, being in a managerial position, it provides you with valuable insights. And I've had the opportunity to really understand the value of reputable professional courses, to explore new teaching methodologies, and crucially, to gain hands-on experience in the classrooms. This has allowed me to provide tailored feedback, like mapped out professional development trays for teachers and their needs. So my piece of advice is that I would say for potential managers in the future or existing managers in the future, always seek opportunities to become a trainer or work with organizations which provides reputable courses. And you want to build connections from organizations such as IETFL, or you want to go on the Modern English Teacher blog post and read up on the things that they have presented there. I really think it's crucial to know your stuff as a manager. So I became a professional development trainer in several courses. And with teachers, at times they'll present what their idea of a task-based learning is. However, I've seen a lot of misconceptions about what task-based learning should look like, or what they thought it was, and what the actual task-based learning stages were. So I think being an expert in this allows me or empowers me to provide feedback during observation that actually aligns with what the company and academic standards really are, and not just based off my own opinion.
Yeah, as a manager, obviously we want to be leading by example, but to do so, we need to make sure that we are constantly learning, growing, and developing, both in the areas that the people we manage are operating in. So trying to make sure, as Koo said, our knowledge of teaching methodologies and teaching in general is constantly staying up to date, but also within the scope of our roles as managers. Now, obviously, the fact that you're all here suggests you're already very aware of the need for professional growth. Some of you may already be members of organizations such as IETFL. Some of you may be members of LAMSIG as well. I personally only joined IETFL 2 years ago, and it's proven to be a great way to connect with other managers and gain exposure to expertise and insights that, to be fair, I could have done with encountering over a decade ago when I first got a managerial role. Yeah, attending last year's conference in Brighton and the LAMSIG pre-conference event was a real eye-opener in terms of understanding more about issues LTOs from around the world are facing, and just getting new ideas from the success stories people sharing about a huge range of topics, from building a unified company culture to dealing with burnout to dealing with budgets. So yeah, forgive the plug, but incredibly useful if you want to stay on top of the hot topics in ELT management. And also, if you're looking for more formal professional development, then you can look into the IDLTM, or the NILMA has a module on management in language education as well. I personally did an IDLTM 2 years ago, and it just really helped me to understand so many of the issues that I had encountered in companies that I had previously worked for. It helped me realize a lot of the root causes behind many of these common problems. For example, A major factor in a lot of these issues was siloization, just with different departments all pulling in their own directions rather than working towards a common goal. These silos could have been along departmental lines, hierarchical lines, or even just differing first languages. But they all led to a lack of harmony within the organization that I was aware of, but I just didn't really understand how it had reached that point. So as a manager, I really need to be thinking about the relationships that I build with people within my LTO, beyond just those that I manage or who manage me. I need to think about how I can support and collaborate with other departments so that we're able to operate as more of a unit and have more of a unified direction and vision. Seems pretty obvious saying it out loud, and probably to many of you it is and has been all along. But for me, if it wasn't for trying to keep pursuing professional development opportunities, I'd have had no idea how long I'd have carried on oblivious to potential solutions to such common issues.
And I think to add what Johnny was saying about formal professional development and also becoming a trainer in a professional course, I think it empowers you with the transformative power of personalized professional development for your teachers and for people that you line manage. It's not just about, I think our key takeaway is that it's not just about supporting who are already eager to learn. It's about seeing potential in everyone, and even those who are resistant in the beginning. It's about building a culture where growth is encouraged at every single level. And it's about demonstrating the value of management skills to all the teachers, and not just those in leadership positions. Ultimately, it's about empowering each teacher to become the best versions of themselves.
I think, yeah, growth encouraged, but also supported as well.
Yeah.
All right. Those are our 4 points rushed through. Hopefully some of it has been useful and you can learn from some of our mistakes and some of our successes along the journey that has taken us to here. We were going to do a bit of a Q&A session, but as time is pressing, I think maybe we should pass it over to Anju. But if anybody does have any questions or just wants to get in touch for any reason, our emails are right here. It would be lovely to hear from you. Thank you very much for joining, and good luck on your journeys into management, or good luck with your managerial career.
Hi, okay. So I'm going to share my screen. One moment. Okay, so firstly, thank you very much, Johnny and crew. That was amazing, and I learned some very practical tips myself. So in part 2 of our session, we're going to look at some common issues in ELT management and how to overcome them. So first off, I've got some issues here on the screen, A to I. I'd like you to look at it and just pop in the chat whether 1 being I've faced this problem a lot, and 5 is what problem I've never faced this, and 2, 3, 4 being in between. I hope you are thinking, or I can start off. Okay, we've got C and E, D and I. Okay. Okay. Okay, so it looks like balancing admin and teaching is coming out. It's one of the big issues, lack of mentorship. Okay, C and D, a common one, yeah. E3, B3, oh, yeah. Yes, handling difficult conversations, giving effective feedback, yeah. C to E. Yes, I agree. One A, FOB2, at E, and B. So I think actually Johnny could talked a lot about a lot of these issues. And I think it looks like, you know, from A, B, C, D, E, F, and then H are some of the top challenges from what I see in the chat. And you're absolutely right. These are things that I've personally dealt with, and I think a lot of the colleagues who I talked about, they've dealt with similar issues. And I was really happy to see that we were all talking about how mentorship, how it defines your career as a ELT manager. So I am going to look at this as scenario-wise. Because I think that's a nice way to look at things in a more practical manner. So I'm going to give you this scenario. The scenario is connected to lack of mentorship. So you've stepped into an ELT management role, but there's no formal mentorship and you're unsure who to turn to. What would you do? There's A, B, and C. What's your vote? B. Okay, we have B's, lots of B's, some C's, some B and C. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so lots are going with B and some with C. Oh, and some A's. So again, I'm looking at this slide where I look at possible solutions as just that. It's a possible solution because I don't think any of the answers were wrong because it also depends on your own personal leadership style. But in general, we would look at establishing a mentorship program and maybe working together. And I think this is something Ku and Johnny were talking about earlier, like working together as a group to think about, okay, what works well, and then maybe we can develop our own toolkit for ELT management. And here, there's a very important statistic to look at, which is, 75% of executives credit their success to mentors. And recent research shows that 90% of employees with a career mentor are happy at work. So it really shows that the impact a mentor makes. And it would be highly recommended that we push for mentorship programs, and until such time we adopt informal mentors. So it's just something, it's a really good thing for us to pursue and ensure that it gets a solution. So I'm going to look at the next scenario in the interest of time. So the scenario is under managing demotivated teams. So your team sees you as an outsider because you are new and they're resistant to new initiatives. So you've just come into post. How would you approach them? So there are three options there: A, B, C. What would you do? B. B, okay, lots of B's. Nice. Okay, so we're unanimous on that one, okay? All right, so yeah, absolutely conduct listening sessions. I really like that term, conduct listening sessions, because sometimes, the tendency is you go in and you're talking a lot at meetings. So it's also really nice to just go in and listen. And I think this is really, really important. Set clear goals and visions, because a lot of people give feedback about, okay, we're not really clear on what we're supposed to be doing or where we're heading. So it's really important to kind of address that with the team. And there's another interesting statistic there. 70% of the variance in team engagement is determined solely by the manager. So as managers, we do have a lot of pressure. So the more equipped we are, the better. So let's move on to Scenario 3, balancing admin and teaching duties. And I know this came up at the beginning as one of the more common issues that you've had to deal with. So the scenario is you are overwhelmed by admin tasks, leaving little time for pedagogical leadership. So what's your strategy? Is it A, B, or C? Which is the best long-term solution? B, lots of B's. Okay. Yeah, fantastic. So yes, I agree as well. So I've been prioritize the delegate tasks and use automation tools, which sorry, is something we can really look at now, how we can use our time more efficiently. And there's a little bit of a statistic there to just show that, okay, the CEOs are doing it. So, you know, it's probably something to take as an example. And it's always something, it's harder to delegate. I think it takes more time to delegate and set up delegation, but long term, it makes an impact. Right, I will move on to the next scenario, scenario 4, which is handling difficult conversations. And when I got promoted for the very first time, this was one of the things I found the most difficult. So here's a scenario. A teacher on your team consistently underperforms and you need to address it. How do you handle it? A, B, or C? Which approach is most effective? Okay. Yeah, B again. Yeah, absolutely agree. Unfortunately, C does happen quite a lot and it is very demotivating, but yeah, absolutely right. So B. So one of the tools that I want to leave you with here is a way of handling difficult conversations is to make sure that the person receiving the difficult conversation is not taking it personally. So one of the ways of doing it is to focus on the situation, behavior, and impact. And there's an example there on the slide. The idea is that you don't say, you don't pass on blame, but you're just saying, you know, this behavior had this impact. So think about that and think about, okay, maybe if I make a change, this might be a better way of approaching things. So effective conflict resolution improves team performance. And that doesn't mean not addressing it, but it just means spending a little bit more time addressing it the right way. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next scenario, which is very much linked to what the last point Ku and Johnny were talking about, providing professional development. So the scenario is your teachers feel professional development sessions are not useful. So what's your next step? Would you do A, B, C? Yes, absolutely. So we would offer targeted training programs. And the other important thing to think about is create career progression paths. And for that, we need to have a lot more one-to-one conversations and kind of invest in our team, get to know our team, get to know their strengths and their areas that they need to work on so that it is more of a customized program that they have a buy-in for. Okay, so scenario 6 is around resource management. And this is kind of a common complaint I know a lot of my colleagues have got from their teams. So the scenario is your budget is limited and teachers are frustrated by a lack of resources. What's your next move? A, B, or C? Yeah. Yeah, you would do a combination of A and B, but yes, very good. Yeah, exactly. So you optimize your resource allocation and you'd prioritize, and you'd spend a little bit more time on planning ahead. which sometimes when we get caught up in all the daily to-do lists, we kind of don't have a lot of time as managers to plan ahead. And this is one of the things to kind of focus on. Yeah, and address the senior manager, collaborate and create resources. Fantastic. That's brilliant ideas that we could add actually to this. Okay, so moving on to scenario 7, which is giving effective feedback. So a teacher reacts defensively to your feedback on their lesson. How do you proceed? Which is, you know, something that we could all experience. You think A, B, or C? Yeah. And there are a lot of different feedback approaches and coaching approaches. You can put some in the chat. For example, the most common one is the sandwich approach. And then you also have the direct approach. So the sandwich approach is where you do positive, areas to develop, and positive again. Direct is you just go straight in and say what it is. You also have where you have, you have an equal number of strengths and an equal number of areas of development, because sometimes the tendency is to go, oh, these were your 2 strengths and these were your 10 areas of development, which I've been given feedback on like that. So it's very demotivating. So some of it is about kind of prioritizing the most important things. Yeah, and also ask for support. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, very good. So yeah, change critical to constructive. Agree. And B, give time to the teacher to reflect and come up. Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a fantastic idea. So involve the teacher more in their own professional development. That's the best way. So the last scenario I have is related to navigating organizational change. And this is something most companies are going through right now because of what's happening around the world. And often we have to adapt and we get the message and then we have to pass it on to our team. So in this scenario, a new curriculum change has been introduced and staff are resisting. What would you do? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there are times you may need to do C, but it depends on B. You might have to delay implementation, but again, it depends on, is that clear rationale? Is there something we need to do to make things better? Sorry. So communicate transparently and address concerns openly. And this is one of the key things that have come out, with whenever that change is required, is, people want a better understanding of how decisions are made. So, and 87% of job seekers say they look for transparency in a future workplace. And I read this and it resonates with me, and I hope it resonates with you too, how important that transparency is. And Shakti's put on the chat, understand and be convinced yourself before convincing others. That's true. If you're not convinced, then yeah, there's no chance you'll be able to convince others. Okay, so just to sum up, the key takeaways are address challenges proactively, and that enhances productivity and morale, and that kind of runs with the theme of what Ku and Johnny were talking about as well. Clear communication and leadership drive success, because we're in this unique position where we can impact people's lives. So a kind of an action or a challenge or an idea or a suggestion is to choose one solution to implement this week so that you can kind of keep track of your own professional development and kind of share with us your experience as well of it. So that's it from me, so that if you want to go into a Q&A session, these are some useful links and articles which I'll share with you, and I'll just put on the screen the QR code if anyone would like to access the slides. So I'll just keep it up for a second and then I'll hand over to our moderator.
Thank you all for being here. And I think that we have a question. Anju, what tools and strategies do we have for ELT managers? Can you suggest?
Okay, so that, well, I'm hoping Johnny and Ku can help me too. So that's a very great, that's an amazing question, but a very wide-ranging question. And I think Johnny and Ku mentioned this in the professional development slide. There are courses like on NILE has ELT Management and Academic Management, but I found the most useful tool being like my colleagues and my mentors. Because I think I've learned so much from their experience personally, bouncing an idea off. Because the issue with ELT management or management in general is every situation you uncover is unique, and the factors are different. The things that are impacting the situation are different. So it really helps to kind of bounce it off a colleague or another manager who's has more experience, so you can look at it from a different perspective. Yeah.
I think
Johnny?
just to chip in a little. I did post a response in the chat. There's a great book. It's actually the course book that we used on the IDLTM, From Teacher to Manager, by White, and also Andy Hockley was involved. That covers basically all aspects of managing an LTO. For such a broad question, I think it's difficult to just give a quick, snappy answer that can solve it. But perhaps having a look at the link that I sent for that particular book, whether it's managing teachers, different types of management that can be employed within an LTO. Yeah, it basically just covers a lot of the bases, and also within that, there are lots of links to different studies, other literature that you can dig deeper on. But yeah, that sort of question is beyond a webinar and more akin to a university course, I feel.
Great. Someone says, Anju, that the QR doesn't work. Can you share? Or I think that maybe you should give.
Yeah, I'll give everyone access. Yeah.
Perfect. So if yes, we don't have any more questions, but I have to remember to remind you something. We are having a water cooler session on, let me see, March 18th, 2 p.m. UK time. So I hope to see you all there. And of course, with our speakers, thank you so much for being here. And also, I have to remind you about our PCE event on Edinburgh, okay? And that it's going to be, I think, on Monday the 7th. Is it okay, Oslem? Monday the 7th, I think so. Johnny?
Yes, Monday.
I beg your pardon, sorry. I just realized one of the questions was about AI tools for use in management. Not necessarily.
Yes, we have this.
I mean, again, it for using AI, it depends completely on what you're trying to do. If it's organizing, then AI can be a great tool to break things down. If you're dealing with large amounts of information, perhaps it can provide summaries and things like that. If you're working with schedules, budgets, then that can provide some support. In terms of people management, I feel like one of the most critical things that I've encountered is just empathy. And I'm not really sure if AI is quite up to speed on that just yet. Nobody wants to be a failure. Everybody wants to do well. Everybody wants to be happy. People may do things that we perceive as silly, but they were probably doing it with the best intentions at the time. So making sure that we don't get lost in our own heads, and that we spend the time to truly understand why people are doing things, how they feel, what they're going through, so that we can reassess the situation and try and support them more effectively. And as we've said far too many times now, make them the best version of themselves.
Well, thank you.
Sorry, I think to answer your question on AI, my partner recently told me this. It's if you want a quick solution or quick answer, you Google Gemini or even ChatGPT or even the built-in system, AI system of, Microsoft Teams, Calendar, and so on. It's a quick solution to help you organize stuff and provide you with quick answers. But if it's to guide teachers or help provide resources to teachers, I would personally use DeepStack. It's a DeepSeek AI, which helps guides teachers to the correct resources. It's like a really powerful librarian that guides you towards the right section that you'll need.
Great. Here we have some comments on Slack and AA and some more tools, bricks, Edval. Okay, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Regarding Slack, I've never used Slack. I've only heard of it spoken about as some nightmarish thing that people use for really intense monitoring that possibly doesn't actually help productivity. It just makes people feel untrusted and pressured, but I'm not sure.
Well, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us from different parts of the world. And we were so happy, we are so happy to hold this webinar. And we hope to see you all on our water cooler session and also on the PCE event. Thank you for being there.